Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
David, hi, Anna. How
Hi.
are you?
Pretty all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, welcome to everybody. My name is Andrew Keyt. I'm a longtime Steppenwolf supporter and a member of the Director's Circle as well as the New Play Development Committee. And I'm delighted to have the privilege of moderating this conversation today with Steppenwolf's leadership, Artistic Director Anna Shapiro and Executive Director David Schmitz. So welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this with us, Andrew.
My pleasure. Some of you may have seen a conversation that David and Anna and I had a couple of weeks ago, which was so this will be a checkup to that conversation and catching in. We had talked fairly early on into this COVID situation, and this will be an update to that. And we'll hear a little bit about how Steppenwolf's navigating the changes of the COVID environment and delve deeply into kind of how it's impacted the theater, its people, and kind of what things look like going forward. So, but first of all, I have a few quick announcements for the people watching on video. For those of you who are listening in, we can't see you, but you can see us. So you can follow the ethos of the gala from Saturday night, which is pants optional. Second, thank you all for submitting some questions online as you registered. We've registered those questions. We're going to try to get to as many of those as we can. For those of you who didn't ask any questions, there's a chat box where you can ask questions, and our team will be monitoring them, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So once again, welcome, David and Anna. I wanted to start by asking David, it's been exactly 2 months since we had to shut down the theater. So what's been the initial business impact and business response? And do you feel like we're leading towards any sense of stability here?
That is a complicated question. So yeah, it is exactly 2 months to the day. And on March 12th at 5:30 p.m. when the mayor and the governor announced the limitation on gatherings, we essentially went from 90 miles an hour to a screeching halt. We had 2 sold-out shows on the board. Bug was in its final sold-out weekend. I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter was in its, I think, the end of its first week, going into another 3 weeks that were completely sold out, as well as a tour that it was supposed to happen. And literally within, I was thinking back in preparation for this, within 1 hour, we went from full producing theater to hibernation mode almost, full stop. Within a day, we let the cast of the next show that was in rehearsal, Ms. Martha, that we were going to go ahead and stop that process. And over the course of the last 8 weeks, have had to make the really heart-wrenching decision to cancel or postpone, really, the 2 remaining shows for the season. So it's about 200 performances, 3 of our 7 main stage shows this year, and obviously just a huge impact financially. We anticipate the budgetary impact to be in the area of $2 to $3 million. We immediately pivoted, as you do in these circumstances, and I know some of the folks that are watching are business owners or managers, and I'm sure you all did the same thing. We immediately pivoted to cash flow management. So in a funny way, whereas normally I would be able to tell you exactly the budget impact, I'm a little more focused on cash. And of course, we immediately focused on people. We have 105 full-time employees and another about 125 part-time employees, including the artists. We did have to make the difficult decision to furlough or lay off those 125 part-time employees, including the artists that were working on all those shows. Now, we paid out the contracts for Bug and I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, so we made those artists all whole. But unfortunately, the artists for the remaining 3 shows that we had to cancel, we did the buyout with the union, which is a 2-week salary, but that's what we were able to do. So we were fortunate on May 1st to hear that we received our PPP loan application. So that is going to help us retain that 105 full-time employees through July 5th.
Mhm.
I will say we are looking at what happens on July 6th and thinking about that as we think about next season. And I know we'll get more into talking about next season, but I think our work has been really responding to the crisis, adapting to the crisis, and we're kind of shifting slowly, not slowly, we're shifting now into recovery. We're shifting into thinking about what's happening in the next 3 months, what's happening in the next 18 months.
Mhm.
Interestingly, construction has continued apace. We are a little bit delayed because of supply chain issues, but not terribly. I kept anticipating that they were going to tell me, site shut down, we can't build anything, and to have many months of delays. But so far, it's less than a month. So knock on wood, that will continue to be the case. But I think, what we've tried to do is really pivot to, virtual programs, both artistically, which Anna will talk about, but also education wise. We've done, I don't actually know off the top of my head because it's a crazy number, but something like 10 virtual education seminars that have served thousands of people around the world. So our education team just immediately pivoted to providing content for teens, teachers, and families, nearly within a week. Really amazing work that they did.
So
And
a quick question for
yeah,
you guys. So obviously there's been huge economic and business impact. What's this been like for you guys as leaders? Because the entire routine of the theater was shut down overnight. So how have you adapted as leaders and how has that impacted things?
I was just on a session where somebody talked about this moment of COVID and working remotely. It no longer feels like Monday through Friday as 5 separate days. It feels like you wake up on Monday as one day and you go to sleep on Friday as the end of the day. It is just intense, nonstop. I think I don't speak for Anna. I don't want to speak for Anna necessarily, but I know I'm working harder than I've ever worked. I know she is, whether or not she'll admit it. Our team has just been incredible. We are so grateful. Many of you that are watching know the leadership team at Steppenwolf. You know Leslie, you know Eric Evans-Goss, you know Suzanne Miller. You maybe know Kara Henry, our director of marketing, or Karina Fiorenza, our general manager, or Megan Schuckman, our director of education. These people are all working really probably 12 to 15 hour days to keep the theater going. So it's been intense. And as you asked about stability, and I'm hoping that we're starting to edge towards something that is a little more like stability in terms of just the fire hose effect of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that it's been what's happened is this kind of intense but welcome redistribution of responsibility, because in the day-to-day, we're bumping into each other and on our way to get coffee and solving a problem on the elevator down to front bar, and now what's happened is that David and I have felt this kind of beautiful and reassuring equalizing of responsibility around the day-to-day crisis management, because theaters are run in collaboration. These department heads know what they do better than David and I know what they do. And they know how to help us figure out how to make the intersections that have to happen every single day in an exponential way work. They just know how to do it. And I think that also, it's so funny, this idea of stability. I mean, I think I'm still in my heart of hearts a freelance artist, because the idea of stability just, that's not me. That's not something that I understand. And I think that what we're doing even better than trying to find stability is that we're riding the waves that are real. We're not trying to force anything or know something we can't know, because when you're theater people, that doesn't work. We have so little control normally. So this is just a kind of that feeling on steroids. And I think we're well equipped. I think we're temperamentally well equipped for lack of control.
That thing is very loud. So try to be quiet.
How about the folks behind the scenes? There are a lot of people behind the scenes. You know, we know, we heard a little bit about the impact of the actors from David. So what's it like behind the scenes for all the people who make the production special behind the scenes?
They're in a really tough spot.
Really tough. They
Yeah.
can't do anything. I mean, it's very, very interesting that the people who are so, I mean, you never see them. They never ask for any acknowledgement, but without them, we can't do anything. They're also the people who are most willing to do everything, and they can't do anything. There's nothing to do. We can't get them in, they can't be in their room together, their giant, you know, building place that we have in this beautiful shop, and you know, their whole lives have been upended, and I feel for them a lot, because so much of all of our identities, right, sit in what we do. Mm-hmm. We are what we do for so many of us, and I know so many people on this call feel that way. And these are people who don't abstractly make things, Andrew. They literally make things. Mm-hmm. And that's been taken away from them. And I really don't know, I don't know how they're dealing, but whenever we talk to them, they're just champs. Mm-hmm. Super supportive, and, you know, just the great people they are.
The only thing I would add to that is we have had some success in pivoting some of the work of our costume shop in building masks. So Chicago Shakespeare and UIC have been kind of leading an effort to supply masks to first the medical responding community, and now having a conversation about supplying masks to the city. So we've been able to pivot those folks. It's not, you know, I don't want you to imagine that there are 1,000 people with sewing machines making masks, right? But it's able to give a few people, you know, that really necessary meaning, because as Anna said, it's absolutely right on. These folks make things for a living, and they are now not making things.
Yeah. So Anna, when we last talked, we talked about, you talked about how theater has survived plagues and world wars, and
yes,
and you know, since that conversation, Steppenwolf has done so much online programming and announced a virtual series of programs. I'm curious about, you know, how the creative process works to bring all this together when you're not, you can't all be in the same place.
Right. Well, you know, I think what we talked about last time we spoke, Andrew, was, you know, our real belief that you can't replicate being in a theater together. There's nothing that replaces that. It is a loss that we are experiencing right now, and that time has proven to be something that human beings need, right? So what we're trying to do is look at how that experience makes meaning in our lives, and trying to replace the meaning versus the feeling. So what's interesting is that our biggest problem during the season programming is that our artists are the greatest artists in the world, and they're always busy. The incredible thing about this moment is that none of them are busy. They've never been less busy, and they're sitting there trying to figure out how to be activated. So we're taking advantage of something that we're really lucky to have, which is an ensemble of artists. And that's not just an ensemble of artists who have a relationship with one another. They have a relationship to our audiences. So we are able to look at what the information we have about our audiences, and what we feel would bring them more connectedness, joy, nostalgia even, right? Because there's this great quote, Richard Greenberg, great playwright, says that nostalgia is just the longing for a time you know you can survive. We are really lucky because we can program this virtual life based on these extant relationships that Steppenwolf has with its community and with its artists. So we're really working hard on that. And, you know, we've replaced the plays that we have had to cancel that David talked about with a radio version of Arthur Miller's American Clock, which has 35 ensemble members in it. And it was pretty incredible because the other day, Jan, who's my husband, was doing a little rehearsal recording of it. And I walked up into our bedroom, and on the screen was Rory Metcalf, Joan Allen, Gary Cole, Tom Irwin. I mean, people that you can't get in a room together in any other way. So we're doing that with American Clock. It's a radio play. We're doing a virtual version of In the Red and Brown Water, Terrell McCraney, really one of our audience's favorite pieces and my favorite play we've ever done. We're going to do a virtual version of that, as well as this table read of The Seagull. So what we're trying to do is, again, look at this meaning that Steppenwolf has made in people's lives and find ways to bring that meaning into their houses until we can get back together.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like with the table reading, it seems like it's getting a little bit of a glimpse behind the scenes of how
That's
this
right.
process works. And
Right.
you know, with all this, I think we're all finding that there are opportunities in the midst of all of this to try something new and do something different.
Absolutely.
So what do you think differentiates Steppenwolf's visual content or virtual content from the other folks that are out?
Well, I think that, you know, it's very interesting. I don't even want to say I don't want to talk about it in terms of how it's different, because I think we've kind of exited the competitive. We're all in a fight for our industry's life right now. So we're learning from each other and trying to figure out, again, like, we care a lot about the meaning we bring into people's lives, and not to be able to do that is talk about taking your identity away. That's what happens. So what I will say, though, is that what we're able to do gets back to the fact that there's this very, very real communal relationship, this back and forth conversation that's been going on. So one of the things that we're looking at for next season is really, you know, Steppenwolf, we're calling it Steppenwolf now, and it's going to be called New Work for This New World. We are going to generate original programming for the virtual platform. We're not super excited about, again, watching plays that are not made for the virtual platform. We don't believe that's what their function is, but it doesn't mean we don't believe in storytelling. We do. And if you just give us a framework, we'll figure it out. So we want to create this new virtual work. Along with that, we're going to create programming that is about access, because as you said, Andrew, that behind the scenes feeling, especially with Steppenwolf and its audiences, is really important. We have the podcast going. We have a lot of new things we're doing to give our audiences access to what is going on behind the scenes as we move through this process and as we make other things. And then we have another channel of programming we're going to be working on called enrichment. I've been joking that my girlfriends who don't work are like, I'm learning Italian. I'm doing my Pilates at home. And I just want to I'm so jealous. But we have enrichment opportunities as well. I'm excited about the fact that people may have time to do a book club with our playwrights about their plays, you know, do things that have some overlap and some intersection with our step ed program. So we want, no matter what happens, right? We are programming and building for a future we cannot see. But we understand our function in our community, and we just have to redefine the way that gets done. The future can go all over the place. There's nothing we can do about it, but we can get to you. Mm-hmm. And we will.
Mm-hmm. That's really amazing. So turning to kind of the theme for today's webinar, which is Together Tomorrow, and I love the ensemble ethos of we're stronger when we act together, because I think it's so appropriate in this time of need for so many people. How do you, you know, I'll start with David and ask from a business perspective. You've gone from a physical model to an online model, and by the way, you know, there's no revenue coming in from the online virtual model. How
Not yet.
how do you deal with that?
Well, it's an excellent question, because I think part of what you're asking too is, and how do we come back together when we can come back together, right? And first of all, I want to just say, you know, we made the decision very early in creating the virtual programming that the focus would be on our membership, and to me that sort of leans into one of our strengths and one of our values, which is the audience, which is our members, which is our ensemble. It's that sort of ensemble first, we are all a part of the family kind of experience. And I just think that's really important, whereas a lot of theaters are sort of pivoting their content towards broader audiences. Our focus is really still on members. Now, if the members love the virtual reading of Siegel, might we sell it to the broader world? Maybe. But we want to make sure everybody has a chance to see that first. So that's coming out on Thursday, by the way. So we look forward to hearing what you think of it. But as you can imagine, the entire theater world, from coast to coast and country to country, is currently engaged in a conversation about how do we come back together. Because the reality is, theater is a communal event of people coming together to experience something. That is how it happens. I've had a couple of interesting conversations with a gentleman. I'm now going to refer to a piece of paper because his title is complicated, but his name is Dr. Rob Murphy. He is the executive director of the Institute for Global Health at Northwestern University and the director of the Center for Global Communicable Diseases. So someone who has got some legitimate expertise in this conversation.
Got some street cred.
And you know, it's actually, it's been helpful, right? Because I think in this time of unknown, getting any grasp of knowledge is very illuminating and filled with hope. Actually, you leave that conversation filled with hope because it gives you something to hold on to. Anyway, he's very much involved in the conversation with the governor and the mayor about this phased strategy, and he sort of feels like what this path towards recovery is going to look like is, you know, first of all, we need to remember that the disease comes, you know, it's got a pretty short cycle, so it's 2 weeks. So we might see action coming, you know, relatively quickly over the course of months and weeks as opposed to years, right? So that's a good thing. He kind of imagines that there'll be a phase in somewhere between phase 4 and 5 as articulated by the governor, where we might be able to start gathering in some groups of people. One of the things we're looking for direction on is about density, right? So it's, we know that, you know, on March 12th, they said no gatherings of more than 500 people. They didn't make any sort of declaration about in what size space, right? So if it's 50 people in a 500-seat theater, is that okay? Is it, you know, does that include the actors on stage? How does that all work? How, you know, obviously the priority, and maybe it's unmentioned, but I should mention it, the priority is safety. Safety for the artists, safety for the staff, and safety for the audiences. That's our number one priority. And we'll be guided by the medical advice in that area. One of the things he's talked to us about that we're looking into is HVAC. There's a lot of filtration systems that you can add to your typical HVAC system that really helps with airflow, looking at how much air you're bringing in from the outside world as opposed to recycling. So we're looking at all of that. You know, obviously we know from some of our Asian counterparts that temperature scanning at the door is likely to be a practice that we'll see certainly in this initial coming back phase. There'll be no doubt that, you know, everyone will be wearing a mask and will be required to wear a mask if you're going to enter the space. There will be a lot of cleaning initiatives. One little thing that I found interesting is he went off on a little bit of a rant about those hand dryers that you think maybe are more sanitary because you don't touch them, but actually what they're doing is blowing the
God.
contagion off your hand into this wide
Oh my
cloud.
God.
So we don't have those. We have pieces of paper. We have paper towels. So we've been doing, we're far ahead in this and have been for a long time, even though it's annoying sometimes to have those paper towels clogging up the sink. So that's really important.
The whole business model is changing because,
Completely.
It's built to a capacity, the revenues are driven by the size of the theater.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh, totally. So that's the other thing just to say is, we're working with our union partners. They've been, Actors Equity has historically been very reticent about online content. They've obviously embraced the moment, as you've seen theaters around the world putting out online content. I imagine a world there's going to be a transitionary period where, we can have audiences, but they have to be at 6-foot centers, right? So we have to seat couples or individual people with 6 feet of space around them. And that maybe means we can get 100 people in our 500-seat theater. Obviously, that's not a sustainable model, but we are working with the union to understand, could we then live stream that performance to the, if 500 people want to come, we can have 100 people in the house, and then maybe it's a live stream experience for the other 400. The other challenge, I think, is going to be just the willingness of everyone to come back, whether or not it's safe. There's going to be a transitionary period of people's willingness to come back. So part of what we have to do is figure out ways to make sure we're communicating what we're doing, and then make sure we're creating structures that allow people to still be a part of Steppenwolf, but not put themselves at risk or not feel at risk, regardless of if they are. So one thing that we're actually about to announce, and I'll give you a little preview here, is what we're calling a risk-free membership, which is, essentially, as probably you all know, we are renewing our membership for next season. And I think those that have not renewed might be kind of waiting for, us to understand a little bit better where we are. And what our message wants to be is, look, we, for us, it would be a big impact. Contributions are a big impact. Memberships are a big impact. So renewing your membership, renewing your director circle contribution, renewing your annual fund contribution, incredibly important right now. And please do so yourself and tell your friends. But it's going to be also important that everyone feels safe and feels like they understand the circumstances. So no risk, risk-free membership means if you don't feel comfortable coming to the theater and you don't like the online content and you don't want to put your money on account as a gift towards a future show, we'll give you a refund. And just to be really sort of leaning into that, because the reality is we're all in this situation together, right? This pandemic is having a huge impact on Steppenwolf, but it's having a huge impact on all 150 people that are watching this program right now. Yeah. And so we need to figure out a way to, all be in this together.
Yeah. I've been talking to CEOs of businesses across the country, and, there are kind of two plans. There's the survival business plan and the survival business model. And then there's the assessment of, will the old business model still work? If not, how do we have to change the business models? So
yeah, exactly.
I'm curious on the artistic side, Anna, what do you think about the performance experience, the rehearsal experience, the artistic creative process is going to change in the midst of all this?
I think it's going to change for a minute, right? I think we're going to follow those guidelines, right? But we'll figure out a way to make the work together. So for instance, we have a producer who runs a small theater in Chicago, who is in rehearsal right now. And they are in rehearsal over Zoom. Okay. And when they are given the go-ahead that 2 of them can be in a room together, 3 of them can be in a room together, they'll adjust accordingly. I think that what will just start to happen is we will be practicing, we'll just be more vigilant about our practice once we're let back in rooms together. But frankly, Andrew, until we're really let back into rooms together, we have to figure out how to be together a different way. because we can't make it separately. We don't do it separately. And our producer, Jonathan, who's in rehearsal right now, has said, you know, they're finding their way to that communal conversation. I had a long talk with Bruce Norris today, who we're talking about a virtual project with him. And he had a lot of questions about, what can I do? When can I do? And that's a creative conversation. That goes from an obstacle to a creative framework very quickly for us. Again, you know, I don't mean to you know, just keep hitting this on the head, but theater people are inherently kind of outcasty. We feel underfunded. We feel like we're always trying to
we are underfunded, just to say. Not that we feel it, but it's true.
Okay.
It's actually true.
So you know, so we're always looking at the obstacle as the opportunity. It's
right.
It's in our spirit. It's who we are, and we're not stopping. You know, I mean, the terrible thing, Andrew, is we miss you. Like, it's
well, everybody misses me, Anna. But
well, I miss you. But
Yeah.
it's very, you know, it's two halves of a conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's what we make, and then we join you, and then that makes the night. So we'll figure out what to do till we get to that point. We will all be back in that room together. And until we are, like I said, we're going to figure out a way to get into your room.
Well, what I loved about the gala on Saturday night, the virtual gala, it was that you had that feeling of connection, and there was a feeling of interplay and back and forth, which was really a powerful statement on the creative capacity of Steppenwolf. So we have a little bit of time left, and I want to make sure we get to some of the questions that are coming in over the chat. And there's a number of questions really about the financial position, really. And the point blank question is, do we have enough cash to get it through the 5 stages of reopening? And how do, you know, given that, you know, the gala had to be virtual, we probably, you know, lost fundraising opportunities that were really important. Do we have enough cash to get through?
Well, let's put it this way. We have a strategy to secure enough cash to get through, and that's both a you know, expense reduction strategy and a revenue increase strategy. You know, on the income side, you know, obviously all the challenge here is in earned income. We're not seeing any ticket sales. We are fighting to retain membership revenue. The good news is with the announcement of our virtual programming, we've not seen a huge influx of requests for refunds on renewals. So we're about 2% right now, which is really, really strong in the industry. And I think that speaks to the artistry at play in those projects. On the, you know, other earned income, right? Front bar's not open. We're not parking cars. We're not selling tickets. So there's no, you know, all of that stuff leads to, you know, just this year, we're anticipating a $2 to $3 million deficit in those areas. Now, on the contributor revenue side, I think the challenge is less this moment and more what the next 18 months is going to look like. So far, individuals have been, you know, continued to support us and continue to back us. We are down from prior years, but not significantly. There are certain individuals, you know, part of the reason we're not significantly down is there are individuals who have stepped up significantly, and to them we are immensely grateful, because others have definitely let us know that in this time it does not make sense for them to make a contribution. And then, you know, unfortunately, individuals are not the only part of contributed revenue. So foundations are going to be hit, right? We're going to see a dip in foundation income that will probably be a 3-year cycle, as those foundations tend to look at their endowments from a multi-year perspective. And I think we're all worried about the ongoing economic impact this is going to have. Mm-hmm. And then corporations are definitely at risk. That's a huge area of risk for us. We In the last recession, we saw a 50% reduction in contributions. We've got back to like 60% of where we were. We never got back to 100%. My fear is that we'll have that again, and now, now we'll be looking at 25% of what it was 10 years ago, which is devastating, and means that we will rely more and more on individuals to help, fund the deficit that is the creation of live theater in America. So, we're certainly on the cost side of it, we're able to, there's advantage to not producing plays as it relates to cost. There are not those costs. We are having to look at, personnel strategies and what happens after the PPP loan expires, and, looking at sort of operationally hibernation, how long does that last? When can we come back, et cetera. But I think what's amazing about Steppenwolf is our ability to pivot, and our ability to constantly pivot. And, I think our team is exceptionally good at pivoting to entrepreneurial, innovative ideas. And, the way that Anna talks about programming, I wrote it down because I loved it so much. We're replacing meaning, not feeling. That is, I think, an area where we're leading. And I think we can lean on our ensemble in this moment, and they are always our greatest strength. And I think that's where we have to continue to lean. So we will continue to lean there. Steppenwolf will exist in 5 years. Steppenwolf will exist after this. It might be a different Steppenwolf, but we are definitely going to exist.
Well, and what I love about what you guys have done in your pivot is that you didn't just take the easy road of, oh, let's slap up some videos from
exactly
our performances. You actually are creating content. And that's one of the things that I really value about Steppenwolf is the creative role that it plays in our community. And it's really, I think, what makes Chicago such a special theater scene. So one of the questions that came in was, will the digital content still exist? And is digital strategy, is that now a part of the Steppenwolf strategy moving forward?
Well, that's one of the things we wanted to really make sure we were doing, which was that we were looking at it holistically, understanding the world changing. We're really lucky, Andrew, that we can generate new work. We're an ensemble theater company. We have built-in resources that our brother and sister theaters don't have. They just don't have it. So what that allows us to do is to long game this crisis. The day-to-day, I'm sure the other business people on this call will know exactly what I'm talking about. When you're in the kind of day-to-day, you have all these great ideas and you go, we'll get to it. Let's try this. Let's try that when we get a second. I don't want to minimize the problem. We have a big problem, as David has pointed out, but it's also created opportunities for us to go, what is our website? Like, how do people interact with it? How does it become a part of their life? Kara Henry and I want, at any point of your day, when you need a shot of Steppenwolf, whatever that means to you, you click on our website and there's somewhere you can go that will bring that meaning to you in the way you need it at that moment. We wouldn't have had time to figure this out in our day-to-day. Some of the announcements we're going to be making very soon include experiments that David and I have wanted to try for 5 years that we're now able to try. So I think what's happened is that what we've realized is this place has been run very, very well for a very long time. David and I are the beneficiaries, and our staff, of David Hawkinson, Michael Gennaro, Randy Arney, these people who kept a foundation under us that we're seeing now again that our sister theaters didn't have. Yeah. And they're just scrambling, and I just feel for them terribly. But Steppenwolf's been run well for a long time. We have to respond to that by being in the long game too.
Well, it's really, as I'm reflecting on it, really expanding the potential impact of Steppenwolf beyond just the theater, right?
Totally.
There are so many things that even some of the people on this call might not know of in terms of how the Steppenwolf education program, is basically kind of an adjunct theater program for the Chicago public schools who are reducing arts funding all over. But this really gives us many opportunities to do new things and expand the impact of Steppenwolf beyond just the physical theater.
That's
And
right.
I think that's for sure one of the things that will come out of this is a different digital connection to our incredible education programs. One of the things that is really unique about our programs, our education programs, is that our focus is on depth as opposed to breadth. So we're really looking at multiple impact points with teachers and then students. We've spent a lot of time training teachers, because if you train a teacher, then you're having an impact on every generation that they teach. And that is a global, that can be a global activity. So we've seen that launch in such an incredibly exciting way. So that is definitely going to be a part of our future. But to your point, we serve 20,000 high school students and their families every year through our Steppenwolf education programs. And one of the most devastating things for both Anna and I, at the moment of this closure, we were in the midst of a sold out run of I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter that was sold out because of community demand before it even opened, before there was a single review. And that does not happen in today's world. And so just devastated that had to cancel. And one of the focus, and one of the many focuses of our virtual gala was on getting to a place that we can remount that show next year. So we're just about to be able to announce the good news there. But it's just, it's a really hard time in that space, but it is the digital innovation has been spectacular in that area. Mm-hmm. And actually, you can join those. We're calling Maker May. And every week there are a couple of sessions about making art that are open to anybody. So if anybody's interested, those are on our website.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things that I've loved about this, the virtual content that you guys have been creating, is it really drawing me even closer to Steppenwolf. And what really hit me, I was on a Steppenwolf trip to Broadway. I've always kind of thought, oh, Broadway's the big thing. And, in talking to the producer that came to lunch with us that one day, and he basically said, we need Steppenwolf because that's where the original work happens. That's where the real creative process happens. So we need to do whatever we can to kind of protect Steppenwolf, because Broadway doesn't exist without theaters like Steppenwolf. So
that's right. That's
right.
So,
I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about this and being so open about the real challenges that are ahead. I feel it's only right that we talk about how can people help? How can I help? How can everybody on this call help us get to the new norm?
Well, thanks for asking that, Andrew. I mean, I don't think it's a mystery that everyone who's tuned in here is interested in Steppenwolf and our future and how we're faring. And we're so grateful that you're interested first and foremost. That means a lot to us. Steppenwolf, as David said, we will be here. Okay. We are going to be here. We are going to be here for this community. We've been here for, 45 years. It's not going to stop, but we need help from our community. Anything that you can do, anything that you can give at this time has a huge impact, whether it's $100, $100,000, even the gesture of renewing for next season is incredibly meaningful for us. It has an impact. Every dollar has an impact, but it's also saying, look, this is an investment in our future. And we experience when you guys do that as wanting to partner with us in our future. And we appreciate it. We need it. We need your interest, your help, your support. And we in turn will be there for you. And we're just super grateful that we have such supportive audiences. So thanks.